So first off, what was your professional background before you set up the patient group?
In my 20s I was a teacher, but even then I didn't quite feel kind of qualified in that I did maths and I did teacher training for maths, but in the end I taught primary, so it was like right from the beginning learning on my own and from other people, and that was only a few years, and then I had my eldest son and then had my son with Pitt Hopkins syndrome.
Is that what led you to set up the patient group in the first place?
What happened was, like all of us, we go out looking for a support group, more information, and my first port of call was Contact a Family, now Contact, and they kind of looked up the list and said, yeah, we've heard of it. It exists as a syndrome, but there's no support group. Maybe you'd better, start one yourself. And I thought, well, yeah, but how? How do you find people? So they suggested that I put a message on Making Contact, which I think they might still have that name, or maybe a different name, but a little section of Contact a Family where you can put messages and people can find one another. And they gradually got that into kind of small online groups. And they also suggested I put a message on a board called Inspire in the States, where again people try to find one another. So back in 2007, I did that. I actually got the diagnosis while we were on a course, while I was on a course, and they were putting in a Wi-Fi system, so I couldn't even get internet. So it was all delayed other than this phone call to Contact a Family. But once I got back to Holland, I started writing out these messages and trying to find out. And within days, one mother contacted me. She just got the diagnosis. And then there's just the two of us, and we didn't hear anything more from anybody else until the following year. But meanwhile, we went to our geneticist and for an appointment to go over the results. And they said, well, we said to them, we know you can't give out names, but could you give our name to any other parents that might want to contact us? And within days, we were put in contact with another family. At the moment, it's sort of thought there's about 4 children in a million with Pitt Hopkins syndrome. So we live 3 miles away from this other family. So, they had actually been misdiagnosed for many years. And so this other dad had been the secretary of RTS, and that's a syndrome. So he knew all the things we had to do. So and then another family joined us as well through the geneticist. So the three families set up a charity in the Netherlands. But meanwhile, with this other lady in the States, we'd said that once there was a few more of us, we'd start a Yahoo group or something. In fact, it wasn't till the April, and then the other 2 other mothers contacted me, and at that point we decided we'd set up a Google group. So that was international, and that's how it carried on for a few more years, and it still is. They're an international group, except now it's more, as many people know, goes to Facebook, and it's very hard then to keep them both going for the people that aren't on Facebook. Later, that became but some people joined us who wanted to actually start some research. We'd already sort of started an international network, but this was sort of taken over in another way. So there was a foundation in the States set up. But as groups, at the beginning, all of us were trying to keep all in one big group, and we still are internationally in that group. But it became more apparent that you needed to do things in your own countries. We had started organising right from the beginning get-togethers from 2008, the first time we got together with a few other families. So we continued doing that, and it came that we, in the end, we did realise we needed to actually have our own little Google group, and that then kind of, as more people came to that, we really felt that we also needed to become a charity. I was advised this by a few people, but mainly said, if you really want to raise awareness of this ultra-rare syndrome. That's really to be taken seriously. That's what you have to do. I didn't really realise what that was, what that actually meant. I don't know if I would have taken that on if I really realised exactly what you needed to do at that point.
And was the decision to lead your patient group a conscious one, or did it happen naturally over time?
I was already kind of one of the moderators, well, main moderator on the international group at that time before it became Facebook, and then one of the moderators, because it kind of accidentally went to Facebook, and then the lady that was doing it had no idea what kind of problem she was having, so a few of us stepped in to help her. Christopher was almost 16 when he got diagnosed, and so obviously my family were that much older. My youngest was about 11 at that point, and my eldest was not how old was he? He was about 20. So a lot of the other people that were getting diagnosed were actually much younger, and the children were younger, because they were getting diagnosed. Older children are diagnosed as well, but it's far more. It's when they first go along to geneticist that they're younger, but obviously having sort of, in our case, severe learning difficulties. So there was this sort of age gap in that, really, because my children were older, and therefore I wasn't looking after lots of tiny children like some of the others, that it ended up with it being me and my husband. Although we hadn't known what it was, and the reason we didn't know what it was, because though Pitt and Dr. Pitt and Dr. Hopkins wrote a paper back in 1978, the blood test, gene that was responsible, and therefore a blood test didn't happen until 2007, and that's when Christopher was diagnosed. So we were right, although it was obviously lots of people with Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, they hadn't been diagnosed, and still aren't. I mean, that's a big problem.
So
with lots of syndromes that have got
common problems.
there are a lot of children and adults aren't diagnosed with lots of things, and in fact it's something that we're talking about as EPAGs at the moment in our ERN. Is all that information, all that knowledge is lost because our older people aren't diagnosed.
What challenges have you faced as a leader, and how did you deal with those challenges?
Well, I'm totally disorganised, which is why I haven't got any slides or anything. Having been a support group, but though I was a teacher, my other background sort of over the years is co-led a miscarriage support group for quite a few years. And then when I finally had my eldest son, I helped with a breastfeeding support group, and then co-led one when I lived in Munich. So it's very much always been support. And so I tend to always put the support bit ahead of everything else when it comes to the support group. But of course a charity isn't a support group. A charity is to also support the support group in raising money so we can have get-togethers or different things we're doing to help. I think I've got to really get that a lot more, get into my head, because we've had a few challenges recently, but basically someone had decided that they were going to challenge a decision of the trustees when it wasn't the forum to do it, and also absolutely ridiculous because there was no reason to challenge it. But they just, because they feel that the charity's a support group, they didn't appreciate that.
A challenge for a lot of leaders is being able to delegate tasks to a wider team. How have you been able to do this, and also find people with different strengths to yours to develop your patient group?
One of the things I would say to anybody setting up a charity is choose trustees that have the time. And we didn't realise, we've tried to get a few parents that were interested in it, in doing having a charity, but they haven't really had the time. now I'm very, very fortunate that we have now got a treasurer, but what she's doing at the moment is writing all these policies that, like safeguarding policy and all these things. I've kind of not wanted to tread on someone else's feet, but yet hadn't really had the time to try to get out of the first person, okay, I'll hand over this to this other one because I really can't do it, because they don't want to admit they can't do it either. It's really difficult.
And finally, what do you think you've done successfully as a patient group leader?
One of the things I've been working on very hard is the parental friendly guidelines. We last year with the Dutch group, the year before last now, we had a conference. It was a time to get other doctors around the world together and to make a consensus statement about Pitt-Hopkins syndrome. And then a paper finally came out, and that was January last year. And it's taken us most of this year to get the guidelines written in a parent-friendly way, which a few parents have helped recently with reviewing them and everything. So, but the next thing is to actually get them out in a way that people are going to read them and use them. A few times people have needed them and I've managed to send them directly to them, like somebody in hospital the other day. So that's one thing. We are at the moment looking at a research project, so if that works out, that would be one of our big things. But the other thing is raising awareness, and right at the very beginning, I wrote to one of our geneticists in the UK, who's been a great help from early on, and I asked, what could we do? When she said to make like this consensus statement. But fortunately, in the end, the Dutch group took that role on, because in Holland they actually have money from the government, so they've had the money to do the conference and things that we wouldn't have had. The other thing was, she said the same doctor was at the beginning our lead of our ERN. Sadly, due to Brexit, she was removed by the EU, or whoever it is that they took down the leads that were from the UK. But she had said to me, join our EPAG group that she was setting up, and certainly there's 5 of us really active on that EPAG group for our ERN. Ithaca covers. Well, I've asked our new lead, how many people, how many syndromes and conditions is Ithaca covering? And he said you can't number it, because he said every day there'll be another. There'll be something found, another child's been born, and with something just different, that there might be some other children that eventually found, but so we've got this enormous, infinite list. But because I'm one of the EPAGs, Pitt-Hopkins is mentioned quite a lot. So I think, although not everybody in the UK is going to know about Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, hopefully an awful lot more geneticists and doctors know about it now, and hear it mentioned. And one of the things the ERN are concentrating on this year, not just this year, but is guidelines. So, and I'm very fortunate that the person who's the lead in Ithaca for that is someone I've worked with, a geneticist I've worked with for the last, I don't know how many years. And so, of course, we've just done the guidelines, which he also was the main author, though he doesn't say he is, but he was. So again, Pitt-Hopkins is getting mentioned a lot. So, I think that's a big achievement. Yeah, and I managed to get on when I was, because I was one of the 2 parents were authors as well, and I managed to get on Pitt-Hopkins UK. The first paper that we were in, they just put, I can't remember what they put, but they just put my name. But this time it has Pitt-Hopkins UK.